This conference will now be recorded.
Richa, are you able to hear me? Guys, can someone confirm me whether you are able to hear me or not? Amaya, Rohit?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, Richa, here's my question. You want to go with Azure or AWS?
You'll be telling the both, or just you'll be covering one
Let's
topic?
start.
No, I won't be telling both, Rohit. I would be telling
Yeah,
you.
we'll go with Azure then.
Yeah. But Richa had something, so I just had to ask. Okay.
I think Azure.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, okay, 2 more minutes are up. So let's start. Okay. So first and foremost, Azure. Let's dive directly into the code. Okay. So here I am already subscribed. Okay, that means I already made an account. So if you want to work with Microsoft Azure, okay, go to, you have to go to this particular URL. It's called portal azure.com. Okay, then you can sign up. Okay, if you have a Microsoft account, you can use it, or if you don't have, you have to create one. Okay. So just it's like a friend, it's like a normal Facebook sign up. You just need to, maybe in the end you need to provide your credit card details, but do remember that Microsoft comes with some kind of you call this invitation gift card, where it actually gives you or allocates you some money for initial 1 year to utilization of its resources, similar to where AWS actually has. So you can utilize some resources and the total deduction will happen from your initial amount. So if you see mine, okay, I just registered. So when you register and log in, you're not going to see this particular screen, but you're going to see everything else, because this is the app that actually I just created. I mean, for different purpose. Now I'm deleting every resource. Wait. Let me delete everything. So actually, okay, this is already happening. So I just need to give some time. So if you see, this is the basic dashboard that you're gonna see once you log in into your Azure account. So Azure account has a lot more services. Okay. So the first and foremost you need to click, if you want to see all the services, is to click this left side icon and go to all resources. When you go to all resources, if you have any resources that are actually currently running, you're gonna see them here. If you don't have any, then you're gonna, let me just delete all the resources. let me delete all the resources. Okay, I'm deleting all the 6 resources, and you can see any updates happening here. So I'm already deleting a resource group. On the top, I'm also deleting all the resources in my account. So don't worry about that, but this is what you're going to see once you log into your all resources. So it takes a bit of time. So please do remember that Microsoft Azure is comparatively a bit slow in comparison with other cloud providers, but it's very economical. Okay, so this is how you want to see. So when you go into first Microsoft Azure, you're logged in, then this is what you want to see. All your Azure services will be here. Okay, these are different services, and we call this as Azure Active Directory. I hope you already know a bit of about Active Directory. This is subscription, resource groups, everything. And if you just want to see every type of a service available, then you just need to click all services, and you're going to see these are the main services that one use. Okay, so if you want to know all services, click on all services, and these are all services. We have different modules. In general module, we have 17 services. In compute module, we have 35 services. Networking, 29 services. And of course, storage, 15 services. Web, another 15 services. So for containers, it has 6, which includes Kubernetes. And for mobile, it has 3. And for database, it has 19. And for analytics, it has 14. So go on. So since it's a cloud, the list is so long. You might think that, okay, just by seeing the dashboard, I think Azure doesn't have enough services in comparison with AWS. But the reality is, Azure almost covering almost 50 to 60% of services offered by AWS. But AWS is actually growing at a very fast pace as well. So the number of services are actually high for AWS. Now, okay, that's a good comparison view from AWS to Azure Cloud. Now let's actually dig deeper and start sharing into Azure Cloud. So the first and foremost thing that one has to remember is subscription. What is a subscription? What is a subscription? A subscription is something that you are the owner of your account. So since this is a cloud environment, everything is basically a virtual environment. So imagine that Azure actually builds the global infrastructure for you. Okay, so it has all the required hardware and everything, but it has to have an accountability. The accountability basically happens with the model called subscription model. So how this particular subscription works? Now you want to create an infrastructure. Simple. You want to create a virtual machine on cloud using Azure. Then you have to log in, okay, into your account. So you are called as Azure Active Directory tenant. Okay. So what is Active Directory? An Active Directory is basically it's like what do you call this, access control management service. So the Azure will have Active Directory tenant. Okay. So example, you are basically the owner of your whole account, your whole Azure account. But in reality, that is not going to be the same. So your organization is the owner of your whole organizational services, and you will be given access to some services. You control that by using Active Directory, which is Azure Active Directory. Now you are DevOps engineer, and you want to become owner of a particular DevOps services of a particular client. That means you will have to maintain certain infrastructure items on who is actually a client to your company. So what actually happens is that your company will provide you an access credentials to his account. So we call this subscription, and with the subscription. So once the client actually adds you through his Active Directory, that you are you can also have the ownership. Then you are subscribed as a owner. Once you add subscribed as the owner, then you're gonna work with a multiple, or let's say as many as subscriptions you have, you can work with as many as resources which contain in those subscriptions. I hope this is clear. This is very simple subscription. Just like how you subscribe for any services in internet, like maybe what do you call this, Netflix. Now, only when you subscribe to Netflix, then you have access to the particular tools offered by Netflix and the services offered by Netflix. Similar wise, for Azure, your subscription basically contains some services, basically your Azure infrastructure resource management utilities, such as Azure Portal, PowerShell, some Azure command CLI command line integration, and Azure SDK. With the four services, you can manage all your infrastructure items on Azure Cloud. But when you actually create something on your Azure portal, the infrastructure item will be get created on your real infrastructure on site. So you have something called RBAC authentication, and everything else is managed at Azure level. Okay, but the only thing that you need to remember is that subscriptions are the way that you get access to any Azure resources with the help of Azure. Now, if you just say, I am, this is my personal account. Okay. Now, if you go to subscription, click on subscription. If you want to know what are the subscriptions you have by default, you see, I have created a custom subscription. What is this custom subscription? Because this is a admin account and I am an admin for this account. So my subscription ID for the infrastructure, my default directory and my role is, so my recent utilization was costed around 76 INR. That means I literally didn't use much. So now guys, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can see this, right? I'm actually refreshing the Azure account for my subscription. Guys, can you hear me?
No.
Hello. You can't hear me?
Yeah. Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the trouble. Just wanted to notify my internet connection, some issues from last 2 days. So still troubleshoot. So I think maybe today they come and fix it.
No issues.
Okay. So if you see Azure subscriptions, I think as I shown to you, since I am the custom subscriber, and this is my limit for is 12 months. Okay. So I don't really need to pay if I'm in my limits. Same, you can also sign up and you will get the first custom subscription already, and then you can utilize the Microsoft Azure to create your required businesses or not. Now that is the main concept of Azure subscriptions. Now let's go to the second layer. Okay, we have certain layers. Okay, the first one you need to get is subscription. Once your subscription is settled, that means once you are completely signed up, okay, so you can create an Azure account. So this subscription actually works in a such a fashion that, as I already described to you, any Azure access that you required on your client infrastructure will be provided by Azure Active Directory Service. So you just need to look into your particular number of subscriptions that you need to get. So if you want to subscribe, okay, all you need to apply is to your client has to add you to their subscription. Okay, now let's move to Azure Physical Access. Currently, I can allocate subscription to my services to you, but it's up to you whether you want it or not. Okay. And next, Azure Physical Access. So this is one thing that you really need to understand now at the global level. Okay, what are these physical services? The physical services are basically what I mean is the real hardware that actually used to generate or to create your virtual resources. Now, if you look into it, Azure basically has the global infrastructure. You can see my cursor. So it basically has a global infrastructure. So the global infrastructure, it means that it's the Azure data centers are actually located across our globe. So there are some data centers on US, there are some data centers on India, there are some data centers on Europe, some on Australia, some and even in Nordic countries there might be some. So currently, what you need to understand is that geography of our Azure global infrastructure. According to the current situation, or let's say the hierarchical model of data centers. Okay, so all these data centers are not really connected. That means each data, of course, they are connected. That means you can, of course, get the access from your dashboard, but they are not connected in a such a fashion that you can have one component, like application component, in one data center, an RDS component, let's say, or what do you call this, a storage component in another data center, and you want to work with the resources. Then there are a lot of issues pop up, such as latency, such as access control management, key utilization. So these are the things that might arise. So one has to clearly understand that if you really want to create an app with an effective setup, then you have to go with a single region. If you go to single region, what is a region and what do you call this availability zone? So the Azure came up, or let's say the let's say Cloud Society actually came up with certain terminology which we call it the availability zone. That is inside one region. Okay, suppose if this is USA, then inside one region, that is maybe US West or US East, okay, US, so maybe US West, you have multiple data centers because of huge capacity requirement. Now, in such case, one particular data center in a single region is called availability zone, and these availability zones actually come under single region, which is US East one, and where we have 2 to 3 data centers, and they are actually connected. Okay, so this is basically what we mean by the physical service of Azure. So now, if you look into it, so we have something called regions, right? So US West, US East is a region, India is a region, and then Australia is another region. So based on each region can have multiple availability zones. Availability zones are nothing but data centers which has all the requirement required to create the resources as published from Azure portal. So is this clear, guys? Till now, what is called Azure subscription? What is called Azure physical service access? What is Azure's region? What do you mean by availability zone? How they are actually connected? Guys, are you able to hear me? Nobody's responding.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, if you look, now you understood the physical services of Azure. Okay, remember this. You whatever you create from using your Azure portal will be actually something that gets get created in your availability zones. So remember what is an availability zone and what is a region, how they are actually interlinked. So each a region can have multiple availability zones. It can, sorry, multiple availability zones, and Azure also has something called hybrid cloud, or let's say another direct service which actually interacts with the on-prem infrastructures, which we basically call hybrid cloud. Now, good. Now let's move on to Azure Virtual Networks. Okay, so we are good. We already know about subscription. We know about Azure infrastructure. We understand the terminology. Now it's time for us to actually get into something called networks. So we already know that a virtual network is now inside this virtual network. You can have a multiple what you call this multiple utilization. The first and foremost would be load balancing. Typically, an application will require a load balancer. What is a load balancer? It's a software component, which is actually or a hardware component, which can be used to distribute the traffic across your application servers. So your application server can actually, support per the limit of the traffic should be certain limit. Example, let's say 100 requests per second. ACT let's say actually a virtual machine with the type let's say small type can actually uh, maintain around 100 requests per second. Now your infrastructure actually need to support at least 1,000 requests per second. Then how you gonna maintain? So we're gonna create 10 different VMs, since each is actually maintaining around 100 requests per second. All the 10, if the application is bug free, or let's say not really complex, then altogether all the 10 infrastructures club would be 1,000 requests per second. So you place a load balancer, that means a request balancer. So all the requests will come to this load balancer, and load balancer will forward it based on the conditions that you set inside this balancing algorithm. So there are different ways of balancing situations, but we don't really need to worry about them right now. But what you need to definitely do recognize is your virtual network. Okay, can consist of a load balancer, a service endpoint. What is a service endpoint? Your application, your database, maybe some kind of let's say security service. Anything is basically a data point. We call it Azure services. Now, from load balancer, all your data will come to directly to what? you will actually that all the data will become directed to a virtual network. This virtual network consists of all the required applications or VMs, which in turn interacts with your services of Azure or database. You can also create your own maintainable database here. Okay. Now we have something called virtual network peering. So one virtual network can interact with another virtual network. So we call it virtual network peering. Now, if you understand the whole concept, then it is imperative that you recognize a virtual network is basically where you do a lot of your work of maintaining your services. Okay. Now, okay, that's good. What happens in reality inside the virtual network? So if you see, you have a load balancing. Now you have virtual network. Inside this virtual network, you can create all the required, okay, subnets. Each subnet will associate with the security group and also a private IP. And if it is a virtual network, if it is public, then you can create a public IP, and they can actually communicate via through a firewall. So all this required setup has to be maintained or can be maintained inside this virtual network. So inside your virtual network, one can communicate with the certain parts of a private infrastructure and cannot communicate with certain other parts. So all this setup or organization or architecture can be done from your end. Okay, but Azure actually supports you to define or to create these network infrastructures as straightforward as possible. So it has something called subnets. What is a subnet? A subnet basically, let's say a part of the virtual infrastructure, which actually contains a certain range of private or public IPs, which are associated with the systems which are placed inside this particular subnets. So in this virtual network, you can create, okay, certain zones. We call it demilitarized zones. Okay, a demilitarized zone is where you actually put your, web servers which require internet exposure. So, like example, so if you want to, create a front-end UI and you want it to actually publish it, then you have to utilize this particular code base in a demilitarized zone. Okay, so that others can actually uh, can communicate with the server, but the server can in turn can communicate with the server production infrastructure, such as maybe database or maybe components of Azure. So you can actually segregate into these layers, tiny layers, okay, which actually helps you to better access control over your resources. So this is basically why virtual networking is really important. Now, any doubts on the same, guys? Okay, let's move on. So currently, let's create a virtual network here. It's very simple. So how do you create a virtual network? Go to virtual network. Now, there's something called add. You can add a virtual network. Create a virtual network. Now, what is a kind of a subscription? See, I already told you, everything has to require a subscription, because that's how you will pay for your utilized resources to your Azure portal. So now this virtual network is associated with my base or my core subscription. Since I'm active user, I'm Skepdo, so I will be attaching all my subscription to custom, because that's my subscription I have. Now you need to define a resource group. So what is a resource group? The resource group is collection of resources that actually share the same lifecycle and permission policies. So what do you mean by this? Why do you need something that actually shares the same lifecycle? But that's actually what we do normally. So let's create a small resources. Create a new one. Network. Again. Okay, now you have to create what is the instance of this one. So let's tell, okay, what's my name? Okay. And the region. So we already discussed about regions, right? So we have these many regions in Azure, of which we can actually stick with anything that you like. So I'm sticking with the US. Now let's not going to the further. I just wanted to create. So now the address space is default, which can actually pick up 10 0.0.1. I think I need to change this because I wanted to create. I want this space because I don't want such a long way. Now, if you want to create any sub networks, you can also create it. Subnet name, subnet 1, 10.0.1. By 24. Okay, so with this space, I can actually create 5 Azure Reserve 251 address space is available for me. Okay, now what is the service endpoints if I need to create? But currently I don't want any service endpoints. I just want to add. So now if you see the subnet one is added. Okay. Now coming to the security. Is it a bastion host? No. Is it a DOS? It depends on you. If you want to utilize them, you can utilize them. No, don't worry about tags for me. So once you define this, it's not going to accept directly. It's gonna validate. That's the beauty of the Azure virtual network. So I'm going to create them. So this is my virtual network now. New network is created. This deployment is getting prepared. Okay, now our virtual network is done. Okay, so this is our virtual network demo 010. Now this has all the required information, and I can create whatever I require inside this virtual network. And this is getting billed to my current account. Okay, I hope this is clear of creation of the virtual network. Now we have something called storage account. What is a storage account? So a storage account is similar to where an FTP server. I hope you already know about what is an FTP server. An FTP server is where you actually store your images or data, or maybe your movie, video data, or anything. Okay, so but what is basically an Azure storage account? So storage accounts are nothing but in Azure terminology, these are like containers of Azure storage objects. So if you are somebody who actually want to utilize or store something on top of cloud, especially in Azure, they need to have a storage account access. Once you create a storage account, okay, you will get basically 4 different types of properties, such as what kind of particular type, and what kind of storage service type, and what kind of access tier. Okay, that means it should be frequently asked, it should be very rarely getting accessed. So because everything is gonna impact your billing. So if you actually don't really use the data that actually you store, okay, but if you store the data in a high accessibility tier, then you're gonna incur a lot of charges. So same wise, it is very essential to know what kind of a access tier we actually one wants to use, and what is the performance tier and replication options. Now, what is a performance tier? Performance tier is, suppose there are some very what you call mission critical applications where performance is utmost important than the amount of resource or cost savings that we can incur. At such cases, you need to have the highly available and highly responsive objects available in the correct tier. So currently we are basically four, okay, of which these are the four different storage account properties, of which we have something other called storage services. Also, what is basically storage service? An object of what type of object actually you actually want to utilize. So currently, a lot of blob storage is really popular. So each object is nothing but a blob object, or each image that you store in this particular storage would be type of a blob object. Now we have something as other properties also. One such as maybe you can store files, you can also store queue, tables, and also on disks. So all this information, so all these required storage services actually run inside a space that is called the storage account. So your storage account will have complete access control over your storage objects, properties, and your storage account properties. So this is in short about storage accounts. So if you see the storage account, why, how can you actually, you might be thinking that, okay, I have an app, I have a storage requirement, okay, what kind of other services we can utilize. So there are something called the security related features are also integrated with the storage account, okay, but those has to be, access control are obtained in a different manner. Now we have something called encryption, monitoring. Okay, these are all the different kinds of services, but are linked to your storage account, or can be linked to your storage account, such as blob storage, okay, file storage, queue storage, table storage. Okay, and I think there is one more, and disk storage. Okay, that's good. Now let's go to storage account. So normally, any storage account will basically contain, okay, example, the popular one would be a blob storage account. So with the help of a blob storage account, you want to store a lot of data into your storage account. So we have to define, we have to create, okay, that the type of the storage is blob storage, and the access control is you can actually, it supports both the hard and cool access. Now it has something called the performance is very standard, and it has something called replication option. Okay, now we're going to create this storage account now, and we're going to see. Create a storage account. So when you're creating storage account, you have to really remember. You have to really remember that the storage account name should be unique. Otherwise, it won't get created. So if I just say test 123, it's going to show here. Okay. So your storage account has to be unique so that it is distinguishable. So what kind of a resource group I want to attach to this storage account? I want to attach it to my network demo. Now, what is my storage account name? Okay, the name that I want to attach to this particular storage account would be storage demo. 1090. Okay, even that is taken. Storage account. Jam. Okay, wait. This should solve the problem. Wait. Okay. Now the location, of course, is the easiest one because I want it to be the same space or same region and availability zone. And now you can also go to premium, but that actually comes with a lot of other features. But it's going to cost a lot. If you go to standard, then you won't have it. And what kind of account you want? So I want a block storage. That is the kind of account I want. Okay. Now, what is the replication that you want to maintain? Okay, this is the default. But should I make this access to this directory default? I don't want. Now, if I see, let's go with the default and let's just create one. Now, the deployment is done. Your storage is done. So let's go to, now you see, you go to group, you will find the storage. Or you can directly go to storage accounts here and click on your storage accounts. You will have the required storage account. Where is it? Still in creation or go to resource. Yeah. Okay. I just created, so it's a bit slow, but you can see I'm actually talking about. Good. Now we have something called virtual machines. Now, what are virtual machines? Virtual machines are somewhere actually services which actually you use to run your payload. So payload is nothing but your maybe backend, which requires some kind of a server utilization. So these are nothing but virtual machines. In I think AWS it's called EC2, and in Azure they are called just plain virtual machines. So similar to what we actually see here. So basically these virtual machines comprises of several different features, of which one really need to remember that a virtual machine not only requires just operating system image, or what we call basically in this particular context images, to actually burn with the correct OS. It's also required to actually some kind of a space like storage, and what is a virtual machine size, and what is the extension that you should get, and also some kind of network related information. All these are actually required to create an instance of virtual machines. Okay, so these are plain straight. You can actually also utilize this particular account. Go to virtual machines, create new, and same story. Create new and type unit. So I'm actually adding another, say the same network demo account network demo resource group, I'm adding the AVM as well. So, but you have to fill a lot more details, such as the name, something like AVM demo, and what is the region, say what is the availability option. You want the availability to be available in such a fashion that it can be replicated. I don't really need. We can use Ubuntu, and the size, and what kind of authentication you want. You want a password or key-based authentication, create a new key or exit a new key, okay, and the demo new key. So once you are okay, all you need to do is to review and create. So this is in short what we wanted to discuss today, the basics of Azure. So you have basically 4 different requirements. One, your Azure virtual machine. The second, your storage. The third is your virtual network. The fourth is your physical knowledge. So these are the main core basics of Azure. And actually this helps to even architect something on top of Azure if you know them by heart. So this is in short today's class. Any doubts, guys? You have 5 minutes more. So feel free to ask me if you have any doubts. I will try to help you.
So Abdul Raghu here.
Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah, Abdul. So for network services, what are all the zones? I mean, what are all the zones we are assigning, right? Like region which we are assigning, it will take us a default IP address, or we need to segregate the IP address as per our requirement.
Normally, if you are creating a virtual network, you need to give the required, let's say, number of virtual networks you require. So, yeah, right. Remember what is the idea? No? Let me just take you there. Okay? Virtual network. You might be talking about this one, if I'm not wrong. This one, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. You need to give if you are actually creating a virtual network. Okay? Because this is something that architect has to do. You're not going to create by default. If you don't give anything, it will take 10.0.0.0 by 16, but if you use fused bandwidth, I mean, it has that can be considered as how should I put it? Wastage of resources if you don't know what exactly you're doing. So you definitely need to know what is the CIDR, and you also need to know. Example, if your application just requires 10 IPs, then actually you can limit this to based on your customer base. So currently there are customers who actually require a lot of let's say IP addresses to their resources. In such case, you can actually go with as big as 16. But typically trying to get a hold and only use as much as you require will help you better. Okay, so here I think I used the 16 and then I used the subnets for 24. So normally when you say 32 minus 24, that's around how much? 8 minus 2, that's on 6, again 5 to the power of 5 or to the power of 6 is the number of amount I will have for my virtual machines. So we go to network, you can check. Click on network. So if you see my complete topology. If you can see, this is my network name, and this is connected to a first name. Normally, it's not going to be this simple unless you are working with a startup. It's going to have a lot more into the plate, and that's why it's always better for you to take care about your configuration of your network, creating a complete network, a complete virtual network. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay, you have 2 more minutes. Okay, let's drop for today. Let's catch up tomorrow. Yeah, bye bye.